Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a bit of a different type of video. I've seen online all the time videos doing power ranking comparisons between different fictional characters, and I'm a big fan of the Frieren Beyond Journey's End anime, and so I thought I would do a little power comparison of sorts of my own, involving Frieren specifically. Which of these characters you see before you could beat Frieren? So, of course, our tiers go all the way from no shot at beating Frieren. They would get absolutely waxed, up to they would put up a fight, but still probably lose. They would be equal. They could beat Frieren, or they would, no doubt about it, beat Frieren in a fair fight. Obviously, this is a lot different from any other video I've ever made so far, and so if you do enjoy this type of content, be sure to let me know in the comments, like the video, and subscribe to my channel. It would help out a lot. But let's get right into it. So, obviously, we need to start somewhere, and I think it's actually appropriate to start with the elf of the hour herself, Frieren. I know this might seem a little weird. Oh, well, could Frieren beat herself? I mean, obviously it would be even, right? Well, not quite. If you have watched the anime, or I guess read the manga, I haven't, but towards the end of Season 1 in the anime, the main characters are going through a trial to get certified to be a Class 1 mage, which is something that Frieren and her party need in order to continue on their journey into some more dangerous lands. But anyway, towards the end of the trial, the final test that they must pass, they have to go through a labyrinth filled with these magical clones of everybody who's taking the test. And the final boss of this maze is a clone of Frieren, because she is, of course, the most powerful character among the test takers, so it's only fitting that she is the final person that they must pass, and naturally, Frieren is the only one really strong enough to go toe-to-toe with herself. And so she does. She doesn't do it alone, but she is able to play a big role in taking down her clone. And so through logical, outsmarting an equal opponent of herself, you would think that I would just put it in equal, but I am going to put Frieren into the could beat Frieren tier, because I believe that actual Frieren, through her intellect, would be able to beat an equal version of herself. Next up is another character from the Frieren series, and that is Frieren, a human mage who ends up traveling with and being mentored by Frieren throughout the series. Frieren is actually a key role in taking down the identical version of Frieren, because Frieren, through her travels and time spent with Frieren, knows Frieren's weaknesses and openings in a fight, and so that is what they are able to take advantage of to actually take down the Frieren clone. So, safe to say, I think Frieren could beat Frieren. Obviously, Frieren is a much more experienced and powerful mage, but if Frieren is able to recognize a weakness in Frieren like that, then I think it is safe to say that she would stand a fair chance and could beat Frieren in a fight. Next up is our final Frieren character for this tier list, and that is Stark. Stark is not a mage, or does he wield any magic power of his own. He is a simple warrior with a big, cool battle axe. While he is an incredibly skilled warrior, I think that the simple fact that his battle axe lacks the same range of Frieren's magical attacks means that Stark would definitely lose to Frieren, although I do believe, thanks to his natural skill and ability as a warrior, he may be able to get in a good hit or two, but I do think that Frieren would, one, be able to defend his attacks very well, and she would be able to put him down at great range fairly easily. So Stark is going in the would put up a fight tier. Next up, keeping with the trend of anime characters, we have Tanjiro Kamado, the main character from the Demon Slayer series. Tanjiro is in, honestly, a similar boat to both Frieren and to Stark. He is similar to Frieren in that they wage an endless crusade against demon kind, thanks to the demons that have destroyed their families and their homes in their youth. And he is similar to Stark in that he wields a mostly melee weapon in a sword, where I believe Stark obviously is not able to use that melee weapon really at any range. Tanjiro can in his different various breathing techniques, some of which are able to shoot out a water projectile of sorts that is able to do great damage, particularly to demons, but I think it's reasonable to assume it could damage a human or elf or any other physical creature as well. So I do think that Tanjiro is more on equal footing with Frieren. I do think that because Frieren is much more experienced in using her abilities and tactics and probably has a lot more up her sleeve than Tanjiro would, I do believe she would still get the edge, but I will put Tanjiro a clear tier above Stark. I think he would put up a much better fight. Moving on to another Demon Slayer character, it's the main villain of the series, Muzan Kibutsuji. I believe that he is also on a pretty equal footing with Frieren. Obviously, with him being a demon and all, she would be going absolutely all out trying to kill him, torment him, just make him feel as much pain and death as possible, because she absolutely hates demons. But I do think that Muzan probably has a whole lot more up his sleeve than Tanjiro does. As well, Muzan has an endless supply of fodder demons that he could just throw at Frieren to distract her while he runs away, while he mounts another attack, something like that. And he also has that whole extra dimension. But I still don't think it would be enough necessarily to beat Frieren, because I have to assume that Frieren's magic is specifically curated and trained to go against demons. So I'm sure that with over 1,000 years under her belt of fighting demons, she would be able to handle him as well. Next up, we have Jotaro Kujo, of course, from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, which, fun fact, was the first ever anime I watched. Jotaro is my favorite character from JoJo, and I think his ability to beat Frieren all comes down to Time Stop. Of course, the special signature ability of his stand Star Platinum is that he can stop time for, I believe, as many as 5 seconds at his peak. So we're going to assume that he has his full 5-second time stop ability that he's capable of using, and I think that that is his key to beating Frieren. It doesn't matter how fast or how strong you are. If your opponent is able to stop time and move within it while you can't, they have a clear advantage. And so I think that Jotaro's key to victory here is being able to stop time, get close to Frieren, get past her defenses, and land some clean blows on her, because while Frieren has great power in magic, she does not really have much in terms of physicality. And so if Jotaro is able to land a clean hit on her, I don't see how she is able to take it very well and survive. So, however, on the flip side, if Frieren is able to figure out that Jotaro is stopping time, much like how Jotaro figured out that Dio was in their fight at the end of part 3 of JoJo, I believe that she would be wise enough to know to keep her distance, to stay away from Star Platinum's attacks, because obviously Star Platinum is a stand that attacks by punching. So obviously he has a very close range. Therefore, if Frieren is able to stay away, then she could also very well win the fight as well, because her magic is very strong and could blast away Jotaro if he wasn't able to get in close and counterattack. Next up, of course, speaking of stopping time in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, we can't mention that without talking about Dio. We are specifically taking the peak Dio from the end of part 3 when he's able to stop time for around 10 seconds. Obviously, him being able to stop time for longer will aid him better and help him have a better chance than Jotaro would. However, I believe that Dio would not put up as good of a fight against Frieren simply because of Dio's ego. If you are familiar with the story of JoJo Part 3, then you know that Dio very much kind of danced around and played with his food. Whereas in the real world, if there was some maniac psycho killer that could stop time and was strong enough to just slice your head off with ease, then he would have done that. He would have snuck up behind the Crusaders, stopped time when he was close enough to go chop all their heads off at once, and he would have. And they never would have known he was there. So it is also important to know that he didn't do that. He didn't just go and use his powers to the fullest right off the bat. He played with his food, and that gave Jotaro the amount of time needed to figure out what he was doing and figure out that he could do it himself. So, therefore, I think that Dio's ego would greatly hold him back in a fight against Frieren, and that would give her the amount of time needed to figure out the extent of his abilities and know how to stop him. Moving on, though, to our final JoJo character, Giorno Giovanna. And Giorno is actually, spoiler alert, going to be our first character that would mop the floor with Frieren, simply because of Gold Experience Requiem, one of the most powerful stands in all of JoJo, if not the most powerful. Its ability is essentially, to put it simply, the power of zero. It is able to, if it is being attacked or threatened in any way, it is able to reverse it and revert it to where it's like it never happened. Let's say Frieren fired some magic at Giorno and Gold Experience Requiem detected it, it would essentially revert it to where it was as if Frieren never shot at Giorno, and that allows Giorno to essentially be infinitely protected, and then as we saw at the end of part 5, he can just put his opponent in an infinite loop of dying over and over again in different and more cruel ways. So I don't see a way in which Frieren wins. Then rounding out our anime characters, we have Lloyd Forger, otherwise known as Twilight, from the Spy Family series. Lloyd obviously is but a mere human, however he is, of course, at fairly peak human physicality. That being said, obviously he's not going to be able to take down Frieren in an actual combative fight. A lot of his strategy and resources and connections are going to be what would help him here in this fight, if he's able to get close enough to Frieren to maybe inject her with something or use a weapon to critically injure her before she can even really know that he's there. However, something that's very important to note is that Frieren is typically known to be very good at perceiving threats, particularly when they are a demon who is maybe putting up a facade, trying to pretend to be friendly. She's able to see right through them and kill them before they're able to make their sneaky attack. And I believe that if Lloyd was snooping around, Frieren would be able to detect him, probably would think he's a demon, and just blast his head off. So I will give Lloyd a little bit of credit. If he is able to go undetected somehow, then he would be able to probably use a gadget or some injection or something to do significant damage and give himself an edge over Frieren. However, I don't think it is very likely. Therefore, Twilight is going in the would put up a fight tier. Now, getting out of the anime world to some more traditional superheroes. Starting off with Superman, I think this is maybe the most predictable and easy one to see out of the entire list. I mean, if we're taking the most powerful, the fastest, the strongest version of Superman, I mean, even though magic is one of Superman's specific weaknesses, she wouldn't be able to see him. He can move at millions of times the speed of light at his most powerful. So there's nothing that Frieren can do to stop him from just flying through her like a cannonball at millions of times the speed of light. So unfortunately, Frieren, you don't stand a chance here. Then coming to Batman, and I know there's the whole discourse of, oh, if Batman had prep time, he could take down anybody. I mean, that may be true for the most part. And mages in Frieren do actually have one specific weakness. It is basically like a kryptonite. It's this like crystal material that negates all magical power. And actually, in a season 2 episode, they fall into a cave that is full of these crystals, and so they actually have to rely on Stark, who of course doesn't rely on magical power to get them out. So if Batman is able to get his hands on some of that, much like he's able to get his hands on kryptonite in the main DC world, then sure, he could probably make a bullet out of it and shoot Frieren and permanently erase her powers, or at least like hold it up to her like you would hold up kryptonite to Superman. And so yeah, he would win in that case. But we can't simply assume that he would be able to get his hands on this material with how rare it is and with him not even being from the same world as it. So if he is able to get his hands on it, then I think he wins. If he can't get his hands on it, there's literally nothing else that he could probably do to, stop Frieren from just blowing him to smithereens. So I think we're going to put Batman in a nice neutral tier here because it is very heads or tails. It is very black and white of his win condition. And then that brings us to Spider-Man. I think Spider-Man, out of all the traditional superheroes that we mentioned, at least so far anyway, has the least chance of taking down Frieren simply because he doesn't have the resources of Batman to be able to exploit a specific weakness, nor does he have the power of Superman to just be able to overpower and get past all of Frieren's strengths. And so I think Spider-Man, obviously very powerful in and of his own right, but I don't think it's enough to be able to surpass Frieren's magical ability. Therefore, he would simply put up a good fight. Then we come to Thor, a character I actually find to be pretty similar to Frieren in that they both wield magical abilities of some capacity. And simply for that reason, I'm going to put them in pretty much equal, because obviously comparing characters from different universes and different power levels with different enemies that they face is very difficult to determine who is stronger outright. So unless we somehow get a crossover between the two, which would be really funny, I have no choice, I see it, other than to say that they would be pretty much equal. Then that brings us to Homelander, a character that likes to get clowned on in these comparisons. Yeah, you already saw it. I put him in no shot. I mean, he's like Superman, but like a billion times weaker. Like, he doesn't have the speed or the power that would be needed that Superman has that allows him to overcome Frieren's strengths and just overpower her, which is how Superman wins. And Homelander doesn't have it like that. And so I think that Homelander would just get blasted and he wouldn't really stand much of a chance. And then if you can see him down there, that brings us to Omni-Man, a character that gets compared to Homelander a lot. And often gets spoken about how he would absolutely demolish Homelander. Omni-Man's a very interesting case because he's not like Superman where he has an outright weakness like kryptonite. The only thing that Viltrumites have is this certain sound frequency that damages their inner ear and basically messes up their like internal system. And it makes them kind of incapacitated for a little while they're while the sound frequency is going on. And so if Frieren was able to have a spell that could control sound frequencies and blast that specific frequency that harms Viltrumites, obviously she can incapacitate Omni-Man and then maybe deal with him. But other than that, we haven't really seen that Viltrumites are susceptible to magic specifically, and so we have to assume that they would be just as impervious to Frieren's attacks as they would be to anything else. And we saw Omni-Man get blasted by a $400 billion satellite laser, and all it did was barely give him a nosebleed. So we kind of have to assume that Omni-Man would be, for all intents and purposes, impervious to Frieren's attacks. and therefore he could very well beat Frieren. I won't say that he would for sure, because I don't think he's quite as powerful and head and shoulders more capable than Superman or Giorno, though. And that brings us to our final two characters. First up, we have Gru, obviously from the Despicable Me franchise. This is kind of a joke character I threw in there. Obviously, he has resources and money and the minions and a bunch of gadgets and stuff that he could use, but I don't think that it would be enough to take down Frieren. He's going in the no-shot category, although I will put him above Homelander. Even though the other tiers aren't necessarily in order, I just like having Homelander last. And so that brings us to Mewtwo, the Pokemon. I think this is another character that is pretty equal to Frieren in terms of abilities. Obviously, Frieren's are more magic-based and actually shooting magic and casting spells, whereas Mewtwo, it's a lot more psychic. But in a way, I think those are comparable. And so I feel like the best place to put Mewtwo is pretty much equal. So there you have it. Let me know what you think of my tier list. Let me know if you like this type of content. I will come up with more ideas to do more power comparisons. Let me know also if you agree or if you disagree with any of my rankings here today. Let me know, of course, if you do disagree, what you disagree with, and why in the comments below. I'll be sure to have a look at that, and maybe we can have some nice discourse in the comments down below. But that is the end of this video, and so I will see you all next time. Thank you for watching.